Road.
That's how I look at it. That's like you say, don't really tell me facts. That's
Okay, we're gonna,
But again, they have to tell us that that's it, right?
welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Warren Planning Board, June 24th, 6:30. I'll have the members who are attending say their names as our roll call. Start with Jenny.
Jenny Flanagan.
Richard Matten.
Ashley Medeiros.
Fred Massey.
Mike Gerhart.
Terry Delapaz.
Jim Leffers.
And Tyler Dixon is absent and excused.
Are other alternates here?
Yes. First order of business is the approval of the minutes from last week. Are there any concerns or revisions to be made to those? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Second by Rick Matten, all in favor?
Aye.
Our next order of business is the comprehensive plan. The purpose tonight is to take comments regarding the comprehensive plan. I don't anticipate us getting into a back and forth over this. It's really a matter of providing us with the information, and then we will, after getting that information, incorporate it or not into the plan. This is there's a caveat here because this was not noticed as a public meeting. We are going to also have it at the next meeting, most likely in July. That doesn't, but everybody who came here to speak will, we expect you to speak. And I don't think anybody got the nuance necessarily, so it's not terribly important, but again, because it was not formally acknowledged as a public meeting, that creates a bit of an administrative snafu. So without further ado, we will lead off with Allison, who's been our consultant, and will set the stage for how this is what we're going to be doing here. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Allison Spring, and I'm a planning consultant from Bristol. And I've been working with the planning board for over 2 years now on this comprehensive plan update. It is not just an update, but an actual complete rewrite of the existing comprehensive plan in order to meet current state law, and standards, as well as current issues and future issues that have been identified. Yeah, the mic on. Just flip the switch on. Okay, thanks. Got it. Okay, so what is the comprehensive plan? Often referred to in short as a comp plan. It's a land use planning document that guides growth and development in a community. It often serves as the foundation for your local zoning, and it outlines how land can be or should be utilized within a community to achieve the goals of the community in different areas such as housing, economic development, transportation. And it's used as a decision-making tool for municipal officials, including the planning board, when reviewing applications and crafting ordinances. So comprehensive plans are guided by state law. They are required to be prepared and adopted not less than every 10 years. They are intended to be a 20-year planning horizon, and the state has already completed an initial review of all the elements that the town has submitted. And we've received all written comments from each of those elements, and this final draft attempts to, adequately address all those comments so that when the town goes to submit it after local approval. Hopefully, we've addressed all those and the state will sign off. So, for the element, so the state law guides the content of the comprehensive plan, what elements have to be included. So these are the required elements of a comprehensive plan. Land use, which describes current land use, future land use goals and policies. The housing element assesses local housing needs, in Warren and outlines strategies to address them. The economic development element identifies Warren's economic strengths and opportunities for growth. This element also includes discussion on agriculture. The transportation element addresses multiple transportation modes within the community, local issues, and planning for future infrastructure needs. The natural resources element inventories natural resources in the town, including wetlands, and provides policies for their protection. There's also the open space and rec element that identifies all the open space in town and recreational opportunities for residents. The public facilities and services element evaluates Warren's public infrastructure, public service needs such as utilities, schools, and emergency services. And the historic and cultural resources element recognizes your historic and cultural assets and plans for their preservation. And then finally, the natural hazards and climate change element, which is a newly required element since your existing plan. And this addresses that increasingly important topic that we've been focused on in the area of planning, resiliency, right? So each of the elements, as you look through the plan, includes goals and policies and implementation actions. And then these actions are all combined into the newly required standalone implementation program. So you see this table, this is just one page, the first page of that implementation program. And it further details those implementation actions. So there is a requirement to assign a responsible party, which is a town department or a board or committee of the town, a time frame, short-term, medium-term, long-term. Again, this is a 10-year plan as far as implementation. And then there are those goals, those action items that occur continuously, like they're never actually fully achieved, but they're in there because they are important to continually be implementing. And then up an assigned priority level. So, you know, it's hard to get into, there's a lot in this document, right? We're talking about like 200 pages, 200 action items, but there were some major themes topic areas that came up, or just like points of discussion. But certainly the major theme of the plan from the beginning was the recent market to Metacom plan and incorporating that, the strategies that were identified and weaving that throughout each of the elements. There is a table that's included in the introduction that summarizes and demonstrates how those concepts and strategies in the market to Metacom plan would promote many of the goals of your comp plan elements. And those action items that are in the market to Metacom plan that are also in your comp plan have been highlighted to bring attention to those. Some other themes that emerged during the planning process, I identified as affordable housing, the need to support, the need and support for affordable and attainable housing in the community, but also the town's strong desire to maintain local review authority over proposed affordable housing developments and advocate for changes in state law to improve the process and outcomes. Another theme, historic preservation. Downtown historic Warren was a focus area of preserving so that any redevelopment that occurs in that area is consistent with the historic fabric. Addressing parking demands downtown, implementing parking management strategies also became an important issue, and that's tackled in the transportation element. And I would say there were certainly a number of action items to encourage bicycling as a safe transportation alternative. Within the economic development element, a number of areas across town where commercial activities occur were highlighted and key industries discussed. A desire to maintain and protect Warren's working waterfront and businesses, and planning for some transportation improvements and aesthetic improvements to the Parker Mill area came out in a couple elements as an important policy. So the next slide, this is the table I was just referencing that's included within the introduction. That is the market to Medicom plans overlap and how it supports each of the areas and elements of the comprehensive plan. The future land use map, this is another important component of the comprehensive plan. This provides a visual of what you want the community to look like, how it should be used and developed in the future. The market to Medicom, the Medicom project area is identified as a special planning district. And the most vulnerable portion of the Market Street project area has an added designation of a retreat overlay to discourage some physical investments in this area. Increased density is planned within the Medicom project area to increase housing supply and create mixed-use center. And these future land use designations, all of them are described in more detail in the land use element, and any required changes to zoning in order to bring conformity between the comp plan and the zoning map are also discussed there, and there is a map there to provide a visual. So for next steps, public hearing for the planning board. So the planning board will receive comments and incorporate any changes as they see fit, and then make a recommendation to the town council. The town council also is required to hold a public hearing on the comprehensive plan. Once adopted, it will be sent, as I mentioned, to statewide planning again for their certification that it meets all state requirements and is consistent with the state guide plan. And then the town will work towards implementation of the plan. Implementation status should be reviewed annually, and there is a newly required 5-year implementation status report due to statewide planning. So those are your next steps. So thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Allison mentioned that this is a 10-year plan and it's supposed to happen every 10 years. That is clearly not what occurred. This is, and it's not limited to Warren. This is a long and exhaustive process. We've been somewhat handicapped by changes in town administration and particularly in the planning department. So it is not, in essence, on time. But the good news is that because of that delay, we were able to incorporate a great many elements that would not have been included had we been on time. So in this case, being late was a good thing. I don't advise you to do that with your spouse, but you know, for the comprehensive plan, in this case, it was a good thing. And as a consequence, we've been able to take a look at issues like climate resiliency. We just had a meeting with the housing director of the state, and he's meeting with us on the matter of affordable housing. And he's going to 39 cities and towns and talking to these folks about it. And he'd already been to 29, and we were the only town where they had seen climate resiliency surface as part of the affordable housing issue. And that's a testament to our current planning department, our past planning department, and to the planning board as a whole, that this is an important part, and clearly it's an important element in other cities and towns in Rhode Island, because we are surrounded by water, many of those cities and towns. So we've incorporated that into this plan. And the market to Medicom, which served as a great starting point for this plan, is specifically built around the addressing climate change and looking for resiliency, particularly in light of rising waters due to global warming and also storms or stormwater. So that element of the resiliency that Warren has is unique. The market to Medicom plan is unique. That was, once again, this was one of those things that the housing folks in the state had not seen in any other town. So we've got what we believe to be an excellent plan that takes into consideration, those are two examples. Historic preservation is another. We focused on areas that are important to individual groups, but to the town as a whole. And it's a unique town, as we all know. It's the various sections all have their cheering squads, and the idea behind this comprehensive plan was to pull us all together toward a common goal that serves all of the town, from rural undeveloped land, which is really open space, to the highly developed areas. And within that, the goal here is to protect the quality of life that we enjoy now in Warren. It is to maintain as much as we can the character of this town. And that is particularly difficult, particularly in terms of housing at this point, given the incredibly high mortgage rates and the low turnover in houses. Those are things, though, that are affected by time. And I think we'll see changes over the course of time, but within that, we are committed to the idea of maintaining this town as an egalitarian bastion, and it's a place where people from all backgrounds come together. I think it's one of the reasons that people are most drawn to this town, is that it's not homogeneous. It's a place with a great range of different folks, and that makes it unique and really a terrific place to live. So that's a tremendous amount of time has gone into this. I want to thank all of the members of the planning board, and also those folks who are no longer here who worked on it. One of our current town councilors was on the planning board when we started this process. Brian Hecker was one of the folks who worked on this. So this is a long process, but it has been intelligently and compassionately handled. And I think that is to me the mark of really good government. So we'd ask if you would like to comment on it. We will take the comments. As I said, we're not going to get into a dialogue about it now, but we will take your comments. And if you want to expand on those, you can also put those in writing, and that would go into the record and into our deliberations. We'll open it up. As I noted earlier, we will be carrying this over to another meeting as well. But I urge you to speak now. And as Allison noted, you will also have a time when the town council presents it, but this is really the best time to do it, because this is when the planning board will take your comments and be able to incorporate them as best we can within the plan. So thank
Time
you.
limit on speakers,
I'm sorry, what?
time limit on speakers.
Yeah, generally we keep it to about 3 minutes when people come to speak. If you need a bit more time, I can understand that, but in the interest of moving this thing forward, 3 minutes is generally the time that we would like folks to speak. And again, if you want to elaborate, I'd urge you to put it in writing. That makes it even more solid in terms of the minds of the planning board. So the floor is open. Do we need to open this formally as a public hearing, or?
I'm gonna recommend that you do,
Okay,
notwithstanding the fact that there was sufficient notice, you don't have to have another. But I'm sure there's some people here that want to speak, you should let them, so.
Yeah, okay, so we'll officially note this. I'll make a motion to open this as a public hearing. Can I have a second? Second, and all in favor? Aye. Thanks. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I'll get my willies out here. So I'm Kristen Reed. I am a resident here of Warren, 40 Cherry Street, and also part of something called the Warren Health Equity Zone. And we have been supporting a group of residents and stakeholders who've been meeting once a month for about a year. And we just wanted to share with you some comments and questions that we think will inform your process as you move forward in both adopting and implementing the comprehensive plan. So this group includes residents from the Market Street neighborhood and throughout the town of Warren. And we do have some members in the room today that are here in support. And truly, we wanted to, some of this, these comments and questions really echo things that are already in the plan, needs that you already have in place that you've identified. But we want to make sure that you hear that there's resident discomfort about how loose some of the timeline is. And also a chance for folks to voice sort of what we'd like to see as priorities within the timeline that you've already expressed. There's some clear need for more transparency around the market to Medicom, the Market Street piece and the Medicom piece. And we talk about that in some questions and comments that I think we've already delivered to you. Yeah. And also want to make sure that you know that this group, the Safety and Climate Resilience Work Group, is here to partner, support any sort of feedback that you might need, any sort of data collection. We also want to say that we acknowledge that there's a lot of really great stuff in the plan. Hazards, open space, natural resources. We also want to acknowledge that Herb Durfee has been sort of an excellent communicator and partner. He's come to our presentations and he has presented himself and he's made his consultants and contractors available to us as well. So we really appreciate that. But so here are our important comments. So first, we want the town to continue to put money and work behind helping people who live in Warren, renters and owners, to stay in Warren if they wish to stay, even if they can't stay in their home. So in particular, we're talking about the relocation of the houses on Market Street. This should involve relocation support, rent stabilization, priority for owner occupiers being displaced by flooding to make an offer on new premises. We want the town to allow us to stay in our homes, even if we accept a buyout offer, until flooding becomes too intense to continue living on our streets or until infrastructure removal on our streets begin. We want the town to add staff power to the planner's office, perhaps a designated climate resiliency officer, someone who's really walking this process through along with her, to connect with the HES working group, such as our own, other working groups, other neighborhood teams. We want the town to be more proactive and effective about sharing plain language. Difficult when it feels like a lot of sort of doublespeak. I know it's comprehensive and scientific, but how can it be more plain about flood conditions and the town's plan for addressing them with the people in the affected area, using as many methods as you can think of. The newspaper is great for people who can afford a subscription. For those who can't, it's ineffective. So on and so forth. And so some big questions. So we know we see the plan 10 years, 20 years out, but what is the town's plan for supporting people if the water moves faster than the plan? What housing, what money, what will it take? What will the town be able to make available to help people stay in town to support if their property is damaged? And what's the town's plan for emergency long-term evacuation or crisis? So let's say there is that big storm that we're all dreading, and the state, so given the limits for emergency shelter in the state as a whole right now, there is a crisis for shelter. So these are our big questions, our big comments, and you know, we bring these to you with the idea that we're informing how implementation starts to take place, a place for you to come and really talk to people that are being impacted right now by the climate, by the king tides. And then also just to make sure that folks are aware that there is a group that's meeting once a month, Warren Safety and Climate Resilience Work Group. Happy to, we've put some paperwork over there to include people. But yeah, so that's our our comments
Great,
and our.
and we appreciate the written comments
Jen.
again. You know, just very briefly, some of the things that are included in there are beyond the ken of the planning board, and also, you know, in terms of where our funding is.
Mhm.
As we know, the town is going through a financial difficulties, to put it mildly right now. So it's, you know, the ability to commit funds at
Right.
some point to something. That said, I completely understand, you know, it's clear that we want to help folks stay in town as much as possible. The market to Medicom was one option.
Mhm.
And I think it's important not to think of Market Street being the impact zone and Medicom being the only
Landing.
refuge. There are things, as Allison mentioned, you know, Parker Mills could conceivably be a place where there would be affordable housing that would not be necessarily impacted by, you know, severely impacted by water, the water rise. So these are, in terms of the timing of that stuff, again, that is somewhat out of our hands, and it's hard to plan for the unplannable.
Mhm.
You know what I mean, it's the idea of a storm coming in is difficult. On the other hand, an emergency evacuations are important, and that, you know, is something that we can highlight. So we will take your comments into effect, and then as much as possible, work them into the plan. And anything that you have in terms of the language, if there's some specifics that you can give us, that could be helpful. I mean,
Mhm.
if it feels like double speak, I don't want that. You know, we want it to be as clear as possible. So if there are particular areas that, you know, your constituency finds
Mhm.
difficult to understand,
Mhm.
let us know, because we would be happy to simplify, but, and I don't mean that in a
Sure.
negative
No,
way,
I understand.
to make it much
Yes.
more clear, and not, equivocal.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I know Herb's already working on some other strategies for ways for us to communicate differently. But thank you for your time. We just want to make sure really as you go forward into implementation phase that
Absolutely.
this really resonates. So.
Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Boy, have we done a good job. I mean, you know, one thing to be aware of with this particular plan is that throughout this process, we have invited public comment, and not only invited it, but engaged in it. And it's been a privilege to work in a town where people are presenting information to us to make this a better plan. And, you know, Davidson's a great example of that. I mean, there are any number of people who have come to us and provided us with information that we wouldn't have had. So throughout the process, this has been open and interactive. So I congratulate the town as well for participating, and the beat goes on until it gets to the town council, and then it goes to the state. And the state has reviewed each one of the elements as we've done it. So it's not, we're not giving them a plan that they haven't seen before. In fact, they have seen each one of the elements. They've come back to us with comments. Allison and the planning board have massaged those to answer the questions or the concerns that the state put forward. So we're confident that once this goes to the town council and gets the council's blessing, President Hanley, we look forward to it having a smooth ride through the state. So, yeah.
Good evening, members of the board. Just in response to Kristen's comments and her concerns and so forth, and just the overall issue of affordable housing and sea level rise. There is a movement in municipalities around the country that are dealing with some of these issues related to housing and sea level rise that obviously we're in a cash strapped situation here in town, but maybe an idea would be, and we wouldn't be the first to come up with it, would be to create a tax on flipping real estate within a certain amount of time. So say like 5 years, people come in, they buy a house for $800,000 and 2 years later, they put it on the market for $1.2 million, which is happening two houses up for me as an example. There's a lot of people making money off of the beauty and historic and scenic nature of this town, leaving tenants and other people sort of in the lurch. And I think there's other communities that could be looked at as an example of creating a hefty tax on those situations, because they're walking away with hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars and literally extracting that out of our community like mining almost. And those funds could be put back into affordable housing or C-level market to Metacom type projects. So that would be my only suggestion.
Great, thank you very much. Again, I mean, that on the surface, that seems like a very fair concept, but I'm sure our council, you know, the idea of taxing house flipping as a means of raising money is something that we could, you know, it makes sense, because what we're saying is that money could go back into the community and be used to help sustain the character of the town, which is why they're making the money in the first place.
The legislation is submitted to General Assembly as it's going to be submitted again next session.
Great.
Yeah.
And that would be something, to come back to Kristen, you know, the communication of this, of information of that sort, is something that we need to work on. Because as Kristen pointed out, not everybody reads the newspaper. I don't know why, but they don't. But that is, and the flip side of that, though, is social media, where people are getting information that's incorrect, and that's a shame. And I don't have an answer to that, but we would certainly like to be part of the solution in terms of providing information that is factual and not based on, you know, an undigested bit of mustard in a blogger on, you know, Warren Lives. So that's something that will need to be taken into consideration in the comprehensive plan, that whole concept of how to communicate information and do it in an effective way so that the largest number of people get it. So, anything else? If not, I'll close the public hearing for the comprehensive plan. We will, thanks again for your comments. I'll have a motion to close the public hearing. Second, Mike, all in favor? Aye. And the next item of business is Liberty Street. I'd have to reopen the
Just to-
public hearing.
We're gonna, basically what happened is there was a technical deficiency in the agenda by not saying public hearing on it, even though we had a notice that went out to formally notice this as a public hearing. So tonight we treated it as basically an informal public hearing. We're gonna do likely at the July meeting, another notice with a public hearing, right? So if there are other people or people want to come up and repeat themselves, but it also affords those that are here an opportunity to even put something in writing to the planning board. But the official public hearing, even though we're treating all comments tonight as official, will be at a subsequent meeting, probably July.
I made it, Mike Gerhard seconded it, and all were in favor. No problem. On the agenda, the next item on the agenda is 10 Liberty Street Partners LLC Master Preliminary Plan. That's actually the preliminary plan, 20-unit owner-occupied condominium housing development, including 5 affordable units. This is a continued application, a continuation of the public hearing. So the way that this meeting will go is we will finish the testimony that was being offered at the last meeting. And I believe there was a planner from Coventry that was being presented.
Jackie, excuse me, it's Janet.
Yeah, I'll get to you in a sec. After that, the public hearing, we would then go back to the preliminary plan. The applicants have provided us with what is essentially a final plan that takes into consideration what the staff report and our earlier discussions had referenced. We will not be looking at that plan tonight. It's referenced and what we're going to be voting on is, in fact, the previous plan and the staff recommendations as conditions for that. So the plan that was provided, which was extensive and very well done and reflected a lot of those things, would not be part of our deliberations tonight. What we would do is we would either have a final plan meeting or have it as an administrative decision for that final plan. So there was a bit of a confusion in the town. I looked at everything, as did most of the planning board, but we learned that, in fact, we were jumping the gun to some degree on that. But it's not wasted effort, I can assure you. So as part of this is a continuation. We didn't close the public hearing. And if you'd like to come forward.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, oh, yes, Kelly Morris Salvatore for Frank Aldi. Mr. Chairman, we were told that the comprehensive plan item would last about an hour. Our planner intends to be here by 7:30 to testify. I know there's public here that wants to speak. Maybe you could take those people first.
Sure.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So here again, we're talking about the preliminary plan. I know that the final plan was made available to the public, but that is not what we would have you looking at. We'd have you looking at the comprehensive permit preliminary plan if you wanted to comment on this. So if there's anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this. Hey. Oh, that's awkward. So I would say that we would.
Davison?
What?
Davison?
Oh, okay.
Good evening, Dave Bolster, I'm the chair of the Warren Historic Commission. Dave Bolster, Chair of Warren Historic Commission. The commission had supplied you with a report about this project. I guess there is some confusion as to where we are in the process, because some of us have seen this new plan and some of us haven't. So we're curious if we're going to have an opportunity to look at that and review that, or if so.
I'm inclined to have the final plan be a public hearing in front of the planning board. Given the amount of time that we've spent on this, it makes sense, I think, to have it as a public hearing. With that said, if there's anything within the preliminary plan, if you've read that preliminary plan and you've seen the staff report, to me, that's really where we would ask for comment at this point, not on the new landscape designs and the number of, beds per unit. So that's that on the advice of council, that's where we are.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, the normal process has a number of steps to it. There's the pre-application, and that, mind you, I'm not getting into the new part of the comprehensive permit law, but the previous one, because that's what the applicant's been following. So there's the pre-application, master plan, preliminary, and final plan. The applicant has been through the pre-app. They've been through the master plan. The master plan currently is under pending litigation for an appeal. Before the planning board currently is the preliminary plan. That's the plans, the application of record is back from the March 19th submittal. That's what I had deemed complete. So that is the application of record before you. The applicant has, for lack of a better term, a form of courtesy, has, I think, basically listened to folks, looked at the staff report as it was given to you, and has offered an updated set of plans which went into the packet I don't think it should have gone in the packet, but I haven't consulted with town council on that, but notwithstanding that, the application of record is the March one. The ones that came in, that many people have seen would be, either are going to be, part and parcel of the final plan application, okay? If, as Fred is saying, the final plan comes before the planning board instead of being treated administratively just by me, you would have an opportunity, because that would be, again, I don't know if it's a public hearing at that process, but you would be given an opportunity, at least through the public comment, to offer comments on that draft, and it would still, that still have to be submitted. I have to review it, deemed it complete, et cetera, et cetera. If we just deal with it, if they offer things to go administratively, I would at least notice that an application has been submitted for final plan. If folks want to submit stuff to me, I would certainly entertain that. But it would not go before the planning board unless they choose to have it, come back before them. So I don't know if that's a longer winded answer
No.
to you, but I wanted to make sure that you understood that the subsequent stuff that was just submitted last week that went in the packet is not part of the preliminary plan submittal at this point. The planning board could make an approval with condition to have certain changes made that could come back before them as a preliminary plan. That would be the only other way. If hopefully I'm correct in making that assumption, that they could do an approval with condition that the preliminary plan be revised to come back before them. Am I correct? Or do we just go to final? That's the only question I have.
Yeah, when you make a decision on preliminaries, you can't have it come back.
Correct.
After you make a decision on preliminaries, you give it the other thing. The approval, even if it's approval with conditions, next step is final.
Okay. And that's where we are. So, again, a premature proposal for the final plan, but again, reflecting the staff report. So,
Okay. So I guess so I won't discuss any of the things that are in that new
right.
plan. Okay. Because some of them are positive. So,
Again,
well, so could between a rock and a hard place. Could we request then that, because there's a lot in that new plan.
mhm.
I mean, I can't unsee it. Could we request that we have the opportunity to see that and comment on that at some point?
I mean, yeah, you can request it, and as I said, I think
May I answer this question?
sure.
You want the opportunity to comment that preliminary plan state?
Well, I don't know if I'm technically astute enough to answer that. I mean, like I said, there's things in there that are positive developments that, but at the same time, there are other things that are still concerns. So can I bring up, I guess
Yeah, I think we have to wait until the final plan.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Let me make a suggestion on this. Have the public hearing go forward on the certified application for preliminary plan. Depending on how things go and when this expert finally shows up, how much more time do you have to
We've got until August, so we could have another meeting in July.
If you're gonna have a July meeting, if it's within the time period to act on this application, keep the public hearing open. We'll give Davison and some others an opportunity to comment on this, on these amendments to the plan.
Yeah, so we're talking probably July 22nd, I think was the date for which would be the final plan. So,
Okay, just to be clear, they're not comments from me, they're from the Historic Commission, so.
okay,
um,
Yeah.
so-
Wherever they're coming from.
Yeah.
It'll give the public an opportunity to discuss those. Notwithstanding the fact that it's still the code for the state.
Right, right.
okay,
Well, thank you.
yep. Anything else? Well, I'm not gonna sit on our hands for 15 minutes, so it's not here, it's not here.
Yeah, so I'd like to just make a couple of legal statements. I don't think he's gonna arrive in the next 30 minutes or so. I just texted him. So I do take issue with the fact that they submitted a new preliminary plan application with significant changes.
We're not going to look at that. We just said.
Yeah, but when you heard your solicitor, final plan is generally administrative. I'm concerned about the vesting that they would get with preliminary plan when they've offered you something that, in our opinion, is a little bit better. We still don't like it.
Well,
but-
again, we're not, we can't, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, but we're not
Yeah,
going to
I
talk
got to
about
say
that.
this.
Yeah.
I've been getting this whole day long, that this is a new application. It isn't a new application. What's here is what was certified.
Right.
That's what they're gonna be looking at. Now, I understand, I haven't seen it, but apparently, there's been some amendments to this,
Yes,
okay?
several.
Hold on, I haven't seen them, so I can't comment on it.
Yep.
But that's not what's gonna be heard. We have, members of the public that wanna comment on that. So my only advice on this was to keep the public hearing open. Give a chance to talk about these, amendments.
On preliminary,
Yes.
public, that makes sense to me. I was
That's what I
concerned.
just said.
Okay, well, then I misheard Tony. Sorry. So I just want to put a couple of legal arguments on the table. And one of them is that section 32-78 requires that impervious coverage on the site may not exceed 65%, where the proposed impervious coverage is 82%. That's not part of the plan set. It's not requested as a waiver. And, you know, this is part of their preliminary plan application. So that should have been requested. Section 32-79C requires that no structure be closer to another than the distance equal to the height of the tallest building. The tallest building is 57 feet. The distance between the buildings is about, I'm not an engineer, but it looks to be a little bit over 30 feet, 33 maybe. So that is another request for a waiver or variance that they did not request. And frankly, I think that goes towards the fact that the second building, the new building, is not subordinate to the historic building, which is the main issue in this case. 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. They can't put the appropriate number of parking without doing parallel parking. They don't have enough landscaping. They're not meeting setbacks. There's just nothing about this plan that works for this site, particularly because it's in a historic district. You have experts, the Historic District Commission, you've had Brent Runyon testify, you've had Planning Commission members acknowledge that this is too much building for this site historically. And then finally, Section 106 requires 270 square feet per parking space in parking areas. That's not addressed at all in the plan set that I can see. And again, I think I just went over all of the significant and proposed significant variances that they are requesting. It's just a complete overdevelopment of the site. I would also just note that the new construction is not subordinate by square feet, total gross square feet, 11,058 square feet of the historic building compared with 15,778 square feet in the new building. So for all of those reasons, we would ask you to consider denying this application. Thanks.
Thank you. So at this point, we'll close the public hearing because I see no.
Actually.
I'll leave it open.
You can if you want, but my suggestion is to keep it open.
Okay,
Not tonight. But if you're gonna come back, you're not gonna make a decision.
Oh, I see. Okay, until we determine, well, I guess the next step here is to go through the staff recommendations and let's take a look at from the planning board. I mean, we're not, when in closing the public hearing, I don't want people commenting as we're talking about this.
Why don't you recess the public hearing?
Okay,
All right, we can continue later on, but I just quick question, through the chair, is the expert going to come tonight?
He was on his way, he was stuck in a meeting, he expected to be here by 7:30. He's telling me now it will be like 7:40. So I would just have him testify at the next meeting at the public hearing and we'll remain open.
Good, continue on with the meeting, if the guy shows up, you know, I think you should be allowed.
okay. So we'll recess the public hearing for now.
I mean, go on with the staff.
Right, okay. So motion to recess the public hearing, I'll make that. Second, Rick, all in favor? Aye, okay. Herb, do you want to go over the staff recommendations? Would you prefer to do it that way or up to you?
Sure.
So basically what I did in reviewing the plan, again, the plans of record being back from March that have been in your packets recurringly for the last couple of months. That there are a number of unmet conditions related to the master plan from that standpoint, which are highlighted at the tail end of the report. Which takes up some of the bulk of it. Actually, I didn't get the color version when I handed out tonight, but basically that it's the latter half. There it is. It's on pages 10 and 11 of the report, just to identify that from that standpoint. And then essentially what I did is I went through the sheets, identifying things that I felt were that needed some additional work. Or were absent, or just needed some additional help. So there are a couple just technical changes with regard to the cover sheet that I mentioned. Moving on to the parking plan, which is sheet 5 of 10 on page 3. To me, generally, or I should say the staff overall, the parking configuration remains somewhat problematic. I felt that a number of parking spots could be removed in order to and shifting the handicap space to make it more, I get more turning radius friendly, specifically on spots 17 and 18, and then 30, so that you could eliminate those. Shift the handicap spot, which over toward the deleted 30, to which is now space 29. That basically would leave 27 total spaces for the 20 units. As you may recall, our regs require 1.5 space per unit. They still meet that minimum, but also just as a sidebar, the new comprehensive permit law only requires 1 space per unit. So to me, it's not, that's some shifting that can occur, but doesn't overly underscore the parking spaces.
Herb, just for clarification, this permit was filed under the original comprehensive
Correct.
permit. So the 1 spot per unit does not hold to this one unless it was resubmitted.
1.5, because they're providing more than 1.5 spaces per unit, they didn't need to make the request of a waiver from that standpoint.
Right.
And they still would be okay with the removal of those 3 spots that I recommended. And as you may recall, there was some discussion at the last meeting over this, as there were on many of the items that I've raised here. The one of the remaining issues that's just somewhat problematic is with the parallel parking on the western side as you come in. The aisle width, there clearly, I think the homeowners association is going to have to be good about what I term regularly patrolling sort of that area to make sure that there's no obstruction of a vehicle that's parked with regard to any possible emergency access that comes in. Under sheets 8 of 10, basically the detail sheets, there are some general technical changes that need to be there in terms of language. And then a little extra language, an extra note for the erosion control, soil stabilization and sediment control plan. I want to make sure that there's no construction or other kind of debris that exits the site. So they would need to basically regularly check the site at least once a day at the beginning and the end of the days. But also that it's not just that it's going in a public right of way, but making sure that there isn't any debris such as blowing trash or what have you onto adjacent properties. Under sheet 9 of 10, again, technical change. I just want to make sure that the any trenching in a public right of way that if they have to do some work in the roadway, such as on Liberty Street or the sidewalk area, that any of that sort of stuff, our town policy is to pave from curb to center line, though it is preferred to go from curb to curb. Where there may be impact on driveway or sidewalk, that basically the existing material source is replaced the way that it should be in its entire width, not just a cut. Under sheet 10 of 10, some general technical changes with regard to the bollards. Again, the trench detail for anything.
Based on council's 3 points, the impervious cover percentage, is that something that could be included in the staff recommendation?
With that, essentially, if I missed that if they've raised that particular issue and you agree, basically, what the applicant would be needing is a waiver from you to make such lot coverage requirement from that standpoint.
Yeah, because I didn't remember seeing that in the initial staff recommendations.
They do have some zoning district dimensional requirement requests. I'm just reading the screen right now. But if that is something that was missed, they would need to you would have to waive that from that standpoint if they've gone over a certain percentage. Yeah.
And this building distance from each based on height, that was new to me. I wasn't aware of the fact that a building was supposed to be 50 feet away. You know, if the tallest building is 54 feet, which
Again, similarly, if there is such requirement from that standpoint, has been pointed out earlier, that if there's need for a waiver from that, you would be responsible for granting such waiver for that. That's a matter that I haven't seen. So just like I said, if there's a waiver that's required of that, you would need to do that.
I believe the highest building is 42. Because I believe the variance is it's not 50 in the 50s. Because it's 35 and they asked for a variance of between 5 and 8 feet on the existing building. So I believe that's 42 to 43 feet, not 50 plus 57 feet. The new building is 40. Right, but it's height on that's not how it's 35 feet above ground.
Right.
And so the variance is not
relevant. In the new existing structure, I believe it's 41 height. It's shorter than the existing structure.
We meet for the areas that are being sprinklered. We need some detail for the source water connection or its equivalent. Some of the floor plans labeled don't jive in terms of the way that they're numbered, so it's a little bit difficult to look at some of the floor plans with regard to where the particular numbers are. So there's some, not that it changes things, but when you're looking at the elevations versus the floor plans, it doesn't jive. So some numbers and letters need to be altered. So for the upper floors, there needs to be either floor plan for the upper floors or the acknowledgement that there's that the typical is the same specification from one floor to from say the second floor to the third floor.
Yep.
When we talked about this at the last meeting, but the basement of the Liberty Street mentions common area to be developed parenthetically. I think Mr. Lannon had described what the purpose was for, that it wasn't to do additional development down there, but was more to be storage for the resident population.
In the new
to be
building.
there. But that would be clarified.
Yep. There were a couple of letters that we had regarding fencing relative to and I think that we addressed those last time, that the wire fencing was going to be more appropriate along those areas where the parallel parking was, because a rigid fence would lend itself to getting smacked about a bit, and the wire fence gives a certain level of flexibility. So there was that. I don't remember, trying to think if there was any other letters that came in, or if there's anybody out there who had a concern relative to fencing. And there was also landscaping that, again, would be part of the staff recommendation, a full landscaping report.
I think there was some issues with the lighting. And I don't.
Yeah, the lighting on the building itself, that it would be no higher than 8 to 10 feet on the sides of the building, as opposed to, shielded lighting everywhere, down limited lighting there. But I think there was a concern about lighting on the sides of the building not being shielded. So that would be another concern.
Yeah, and that's the next two sections that summarize what I put together. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that I'm more detailed in my statements than the chairman. I apologize.
I can be detailed.
And then there are, under statute, you do need to make you have to make the findings under the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act, which are starting on page 7, the findings A through G. And so basically, I think the applicant, as they've gone through the entire process so far, they've at least through the application that was deemed complete in March, is there, assuming that they meet the conditions of the preliminary plan, that should you grant approval. And then there are other general conditions that that are sort of standard that we go through, but there are matters in terms of making sure that there are the building permits secure, that they if there are any temporary easements that may be required, that they get those secured prior to moving forward on that. There's a current development going on where that did not occur, which caused problems. So basically, as a regular condition, I'm now making sure that the applicant's aware of that and makes those so that we can eliminate that issue moving forward. Obviously, they got to get their any other state, federal permits. They've got to meet the applicable building codes as well as NFPA, which are the fire codes. Before any issuance of a certificate of occupancy, if there are any fees that are owed the town, those need to be made. I do have in here if there is any applicable proof of subsidy that needs to be made, which they've replied that they didn't need to, but that's still a standard language that we have in here. We also require as-built. There are zoning waivers and other waivers that they're requesting. Those obviously need to be probably made under more scrutiny if there are a couple that seem to be missed. The master plan conditions need to be met in terms of the highlights that I had, again, that I mentioned earlier on pages 10 and 11. And then I just attached the master plan approval from before. So that's why it's thick.
Thank you.
So, and you did include some comments on the windows and
Yes.
the landscape plan and
Yep.
and things, just make sure everybody knows they're there also.
Comments, concerns from the board?
We move on to preliminary approval.
We can, that would be the next step.
Do we approve the staff comments, and how do we do it?
Well, it's a matter of, it would be approving the preliminary plan or denying the preliminary plan, and if approving it with the staff recommendations.
Okay, you don't approve the staff recommendations now.
But no, but those would be considered conditions
You can reference the staff report in your
as,
motion to approve when you go through the steps. Herb's done a good job here with this report. And it is okay as a finding of fact to rely upon what Herb has in his report. That would be done in the motion for whatever you approve tonight.
okay. All right,
I'll move that we grant preliminary approval to this application, 10 Liberty Street.
Wait a minute, I've got it. Did we not talk about that we needed to leave this open until July?
No, this is preliminary approval. This is not final.
yeah, this is,
I thought that's what he said.
go ahead, Lynn.
So I move preliminary approval subject to the comments that are in the staff report.
Findings of fact.
I move that we table that recommendation.
Can
Well, wait a minute, you can't do that.
Honestly, it's a motion. And
There's a motion.
You can't do that if you're a second.
Yeah, I'd second that motion.
Is there discussion?
I guess so. If we approve this, this just kind of gets us to that next step so that we can look at this next plan that we're
Right.
not supposed to talk about. Is that kind of what happens? I mean, because right now I feel like I'm,
This the distinction, typically what happens, I don't think, that's something that's delegated to the administrative officer. Just to make sure that all of the conditions that will set a preliminary plan approval are approved. That's typically what happens. I think what Chair was saying, that perhaps it could be a more formal action at a final plan approval, that there would be a hearing and there could be comments on this new plan that was submitted. So my suggestion was, keep the public hearing open so that comments could be made at the preliminary plan stage. Not only on this report, and not only on this application, but also these amendments, which are quite extensive.
right.
Then that could be incorporated at the preliminary plan stage, rather than going to final, which is a much more conservative review under the statute.
I mean, that makes sense to me because I feel like we're voting on a plan that is
That's incomplete.
is like a lot of it is irrelevant right now. And so voting,
What you're doing is you're going on the plan that was certified.
right,
But as Mr. Bolster said, we can't unsee what has been submitted before you. And, the opportunity to comment, would perhaps be better, this is my suggestion, would perhaps be better if you just continued it, so that you can talk about those and go from there before you get to the final.
So,
But that's up to you.
but in that case, we would then potentially have the final plan administratively approved.
That's
Because
correct,
we would
yeah.
have
That would-
taken
That's
that
correct.
preliminary, okay.
And we would be able to then comment on the new submission.
Correct. That was the reason I sent communicated with you all last week, as to whether or not you thought you had enough time to think about that. It's out there. And of course, there's been some comments that there's some good things in there, but there's some things that others would like to take a look at, perhaps you would too. And the question is, do you want to at least review it, even though you won't vote on it at the preliminary plan stage? Or do you want to vote on it now, which is the motion that has been seconded for preliminary plan approval, save that for final, knowing that you have a much more constricted view? That's your choice.
You recommend number one?
You know what? I got in enough trouble tonight, enough trouble this entire week.
Yeah, no, okay, I misunderstood. I thought you were, we were looking at preliminary plan approval and then moving to a final plan public hearing. You're saying that another way is to simply continue this with that new plan in front of us.
Yes,
Yes.
you're not gonna be voting on it. You'd still say that for final, but at least you would get some comments, and perhaps your conditions would be different at this stage.
And I think that's kind of like, yeah.
All right, yeah, that seems reasonable.
So.
Just so I'm understanding. At the next meeting, we would continue today, the next meeting. We would have the new submission to look at, and any of the changes that we'd like in that new submission would be a condition of the approval of the plan that we are looking at tonight.
You could,
Okay,
you could, and by the way, you have to take all the changes. You can say, these are things we like and things we don't like.
If that, again, keeping it within the deadline of August 8th,
11.
11th. So that would definitely put, to my way of thinking, that would definitely put the final plan into an administrative, because we're not going to meet again to do yet another public hearing on the final plan.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, all right.
The next meeting would be our final public meeting.
Yeah,
Next meeting is
Next meeting, final public meeting, and then it goes,
Yeah.
the Borough
Okay.
takes over.
at preliminary.
all right. All right, because it is a little confusing here, the fact that we have, sure, yeah, I mean, this,
Oh, we're gonna look for an open meeting?
Hi, my name's Ron Lauro. I'm one of the developers. Ron Lauro.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just had a question. So we're on a deadline for August.
right.
So what happens if something happens between now and the next meeting and you guys don't meet in July?
Oh,
Does that work?
we're.
No, I'm just saying, just
As a
what
matter
I've
of-
come here one
Excuse
time.
me, as a matter of law, if the decision isn't made by the deadline, the application is being approved.
Oh, approved.
Okay.
Okay. I didn't know the laws. That's why I was
That's the
asking the
law.
question.
Okay,
So nothing's gonna happen.
Because we came to a meeting and there was no power and we didn't have any.
Understood, but that's what the law is, unless the lawyers that are here disagree with that interpretation. You know, you gotta
okay,
disagree.
so, all right, this is,
Finally gotta agree.
given that, I want to rescind the approval.
Yeah, I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, that does make sense to me, still fairly convoluted, but I believe I see my way through the fog. To the the goal here is to be, and I think it makes sense to have that plan before us, because a lot of work went into it, and it does reflect when I saw a great number of the staff recommendations, and there might just be a few things, so that would be our final bite of the apple here. This goes no further than the July 22nd meeting.
Could I ask that Herb essentially analyze the new plan and revise his staff recommendations appropriately?
Hey, you got a month. I mean,
That's an excellent suggestion. I put it in form of motion.
there you go.
So I move that I'll rescind my initial motion and in deference to the consideration of the revised plan at the meeting scheduled for
Monday, July
22nd, given the fact that Herb will alter his staff recommendations to reflect the new plan.
The amended vote.
The amended plan, we want to be careful. It's not a new plan because
But you're gonna be voting on the plan that was certified.
Why aren't we doing that tonight?
As amended.
You could.
Except that, yeah, Mike, we can't do it. Mike, we can't do it tonight because, we don't have all of the conditions that we want to add to the proposal that incorporates what they're agreeing to do in their new plan.
This doesn't give you 2 bites of the apple, it gives you 3 bites.
I've had enough apple. Ready for some cherries here.
So it gives us an opportunity to look at how they responded to the staff comments.
And you can incorporate, you can do whatever you want for condition on the plan that was certified.
Right.
Gives you flexibility,
Okay,
kind of like them.
great.
Is there a second to that?
To the motion for, your, updated
My actual
staff
work, yes.
recommendation. Yes, right, that will keep you up at night.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor? Aye. So essentially, we're continuing this process where,
I'm gonna recommend that, the July 22nd, that you sit down, have a public hearing,
Yeah.
so that the public can participate
okay,
and make some comments. And of course, it's a public record, for this, subsequent submission. People can, discuss it, you all can take a good look at it
okay.
and make a decision from there.
And this is available on the town website, and so I assume we would just leave it on the town website so that folks are able to take a look at it. It's fairly comprehensive, but this is pretty much where we were. One of the things that we were asking about, and there was just a little bit of a miscommunication internally that created this. But I think we've smoothed it over and we're ready to go on July 22nd. So that would be our final decision, and then we would move the final to an administrative action.
It's a salutary thing that this, these issues that, are being addressed now, but this gives everybody an opportunity to comment on those efforts.
Yep. Okay.
I've got one question. Do any of you have anything to add? Any questions?
Excuse me.
Thank you for asking. Thank you.
The only little cautious as to what I propose here, but I do have a graph prepared by Mr. Pimentel, which I can either provide you now or subsequently as to the differences between the 2 plans. That which is the unseen plan and the one that was certified in terms of the sizes and differentiations between the density and the massing of the site.
Ed Pimentel for the record.
Yeah, why don't you step up, Bruce?
Yeah, Ed Pimentel for the record. I know a lot of materials were submitted to your attention. And I know you're gonna read it thoroughly and compare it to what has been certified. What I did was colloquially a cheat sheet through all the iterations. TRC, master plan approved, preliminary submission, the new one, the amended one.
Yes, please, I have a full-time job and a child
With
and.
all the numbers. So I want you, council has a chance to review too, so that's why I didn't want to just dump it. It gives a chance for everybody. to
So this
review.
would be considered at our next meeting.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah,
So, and it gives the actual quantity number that's changed and the reduction percentage.
okay. Great. Yeah, that would be
This
helpful.
allows additional information that will make it easier for the board.
Yeah.
It should be submitted as a public record and everybody should be able to look at it.
Right.
Yes.
But if we get it now, we can accept it. right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That'd be good.
So I'll submit it through your town plan.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But basically, it's just boom, 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 every other one.
All right.
Mr.
Okay,
Chairman?
do we need to make any further motions on this or? I mean, I think we're,
No, I guess the expert isn't going to be able to attend, so you probably don't want to adjourn at this time.
okay.
I do have one last question. There was a pro forma in the certified packet that we received. I don't know whether that needs to be updated for the change to the packet, because, you know, the bedroom count has changed, and such. I don't know whether that's going to affect their sales pro forma or not. And so I put that out there as a
I'm sorry, that,
Jim, I could change it if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean,
The only
it-
difference is we reduced we eliminated the 3-bedroom units.
right,
Well, but then is the expectation that you would achieve the same sales? And
Not the same retail,
right. So the pro forma would change.
the pro forma would have to be updated
Yeah.
to, and I did not see that in the,
No.
I did not see the updated pro forma in the updated plan that I haven't looked at yet.
So what is your name?
I'm sorry, John Landon, I'm one of the developers, LANNAN.
Okay, one final point, you recess the public hearing. And you can unrecess it at the next meeting, you don't need to make a motion to continue because you're on recess.
Okay, all right. So, it's like Sergeant Schultz, I see nothing. Okay, well, thank you very much. And that concludes this particular part of the agenda.
Did you move to adjourn?
Well, did you have anything you wanted to chat about?
No.
Okay.
I'm not.
So I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second,
I second.
second, Ashley.